Could this terrifying encounter with one of the most elusive creatures in North America have been buried for over 5 decades? And if so, what other unknown creatures are hiding in our national parks? Welcome to Parks Unseen. I'm your host, Liam Wolf. Tonight, we dive back into the hidden archives of the National Park Service, uncovering a report that has never seen the light of day, until now. Thanks to an anonymous source, we received a box of reports from the 1970s and 80s, where brave park rangers documented their eerie encounters with creatures beyond our understanding. These are their stories, unfiltered and unedited. And later we'll share a chilling connection between this report and incredible new footage emerging from the same area. So without further ado, let's jump right into our report. Date: July 27, 1972. Case ID number 43. Location: North Cascades National Park, Washington. Time: 5:08 p.m. Reporting Officer S. Grayson. Incident report reads: Reporting officer has first-hand encounter with undefined species at fire lookout overnight while assisting 2 hikers in distress. Multiple incidents occurring over a period of 48 hours are detailed herein. (5:15 p.m. yesterday, Wednesday, July 26th, 2 distressed hikers, J and L, arrived at the lookout in a state of panic, demanding an emergency escort down the mountain. They were both ambulatory, but J had a twisted ankle that would not allow him to run if needed. Both seemed very frightened, but didn't want to talk about it. I radioed district for support to assist them, but due to the fire control work over at Okanogan, there was no one available to do a courtesy walk down the mountain. Manager M. Milley suggested I allow them to stay the night at the fire lookout under my supervision, and perhaps they'd feel calmer in the morning. I offered Jay an ice pack and ace bandage for his swollen ankle, which he accepted. As per policy, I asked them to wait outside the lookout and enjoy the views until dark. I noted that they were carrying 22 rifles and reminded them there was no hunting permitted in the North Cascades National Park. They insisted they only hunted in the adjacent Mount Baker National Forest before crossing into the park. I decided that was at least semi-plausible and let the matter go. The 2 hikers set up for themselves a small camp with shade and a fire pit below the lookout. Once I inspected it and found it satisfactorily safe, they roasted some small game they had caught on their travels. They brought the cooked meat inside to share with me for dinner, and we ate all but 1 skewered rabbit they had shot. The men were beginning to relax and finally ready to talk. 2 days ago, Tuesday, July 25th, they had been hiking through the Mount Baker Forest moving toward the park when they met an Indian man on the trail. He was older, maybe 50, and said he was Salish. He saw their hunting guns and warned not to shoot them right now because the Sasquatch, the wild men, were nearby and would be angry if they heard the shots. He said they should only use traps and knives because the Sasquatch think guns are not fair to the animals. J and L considered what the man said, but seeing as how they didn't believe in Sasquatch at the time, they dismissed the warning as just superstition and parted ways. Besides, they didn't know how to hunt with traps or knives, so guns it was. However, the area felt strangely quiet, with few animals in sight. It seemed as though a dog or a deer was pacing with them. They'd hear sounds of movement in the brush, but when they stopped, there was nothing but that eerie quiet again. After several hours and just a few small game in tow, they crossed into the park and made camp yesterday at Sourdough Lake. That night, while roasting their kill over the fire, they heard a strange howling from across the lake, unlike any sound they'd ever heard from an animal before. The howl seemed unusual, almost human-like in tone, but much louder than a human could produce. They briefly thought it might have been the old Indian man trying to scare them, but then they heard another howl from a different direction. and then another, and another, and it was suddenly clear they were surrounded. The frogs that had been croaking all night by the water abruptly stopped. A strange stench slowly filled the air, something putrid and rank, like rotting meat and sulfur. The two men sat in silence, frozen in fear, until a loud twig snapped about 20 feet away, shocking them into action. They kicked out the fire, grabbed their guns, and L managed to throw on his pack. When another twig snapped close by, they took off running. The smell grew stronger as something trailed behind them, breaking through the brush. Suddenly, something grabbed at L, and he almost had his pack ripped off his back. They ran for as long as they could, until Jay tripped on a branch and turned his ankle. They found a thicket of deadfall to hide in and could defend themselves from behind an adjacent rocky outcrop. The rest of the night was uneventful, but neither hiker could sleep. At dawn, they came out of hiding and tried to figure out where they were and how to get out of the park as quickly as possible. After some debate and some laughter at their own fearfulness, they decided to return to Sourdough Lake for their belongings. It was slow going with Jay's ankle swollen up, but he could still walk using his gun at times as a walking stick or cane. By the time they reached their camp, they had convinced themselves that it was all in their heads. Even L's backpack getting ripped, they decided, was probably just caught in a tree branch while running. But upon arrival, they were shocked to find the camp destroyed. Food and clothing ripped apart in shreds, their tents were down and poles broken. Jay's unrolled sleeping bag was thrown 20 feet up into a tree. The men tensely packed up while keeping an eye and ear out for whatever it was that had been there last night. As they set out along the trail, they spotted the fire lookout and slowly made their way up. Having heard this wild story, I asked to inspect L's backpack. It looked like a claw had ripped across it. That suggested to me a bear attack, although the howling wouldn't be consistent with that, and it's unlikely they could have outrun a wild bear in any case. Whatever it was, I'm personally doubtful of the tree branch theory. I asked if they fired at their attackers. They both glumly said no, they were too frightened to stop running. I asked them point blank if they thought this attack was from Sasquatches or men or bears. Both shook their heads in hopeless uncertainty. "I don't know," was all L would say. Jay just stopped talking altogether. I suggested some sleep might do everyone good. I gave them the bunk beds on the north wall and started cleaning up dinner. I set aside the last rabbit on a spit and sat down to start this report. It was then that I heard the first howl. The sound came from midway up Davis Ridge. The hikers shot up straight in their beds, cursing and trembling, and confirmed it was the same howl they had heard the night before. In my 12 years at NCNP, I've never heard anything quite like that before, almost like an animal trying to sound like an angry human, but not quite right. Similar to the way a coyote will mimic the call of domestic dogs to trick them into jumping a fence, only to be attacked by the wild pack. It's deeply disturbing to me to not be able to identify the source of that sound. As much to calm myself as the hikers, I took out all 3 loaded guns from my locker and cautioned Jay and L to stay silent and not move. There was a scratching sound like animal movements underneath the cabin. It could have just been a raccoon or something drawn to their fire pit, but I wasn't taking any chances at this point. I pounded on the cabin floor with the butt of my gun to scare it off, only to hear it roar back with a loud and angry howl like we had heard before. It then began beating furiously on one of the pile posts, almost as if to break it and destabilize the cabin. All 3 of us leapt to our feet, grabbed our guns, and took positions at the windows scanning for attack. It was dark out and hard to make out anything, but I had to get the creature away from the lookout, out in the open where I could see it. I grabbed the leftover rabbit and threw it out onto the rocks, hoping to draw the creature out of hiding. We could hear the sound of something large scrambling down the rocks after the rabbit. We all gasped as we caught sight of something tall, broad and hairy, an ape-like creature, moving like a man but larger than both. I knew in my gut that could only have been a Sasquatch. He looked back for a moment and held the rabbit high over his head, as if in victory, and ran off into the brush, breaking trees and limbs as it went. I'm grateful that we all held our fire, though we still held our positions, waiting, watching, and listening. We heard it howl again in the distance, only this time not quite so angry, more like a warning, don't mess with Sasquatch. Finally, we stood down and went to bed. There were no further disturbances that night. At 10 a.m. this morning, Ranger Ellis came to relieve me of fire watch for the day so I could escort the men down myself. I felt a responsibility to them, having shared this experience and knowing that no one was going to believe them without my confirmation of the sighting. I informed Ellis of the events and warned him to be watchful in the evening. Ellis had brought up a crutch, which Jay was happy to borrow, and we walked down the mountain without incident. I hope this report is taken seriously. With the upcoming opening of the new Highway 20 and the influx of visitors with little wilderness experience about to increase tenfold, we could have a situation on our hands that none of us are prepared for. At the least, perhaps we need to consider controlling access to the backcountry and keep the recreational areas within just a few miles of Ross Lake. Perhaps a permit system, like Yosemite has instituted, might be helpful to control access if we need to quiet things down. This report is submitted for official documentation by Park Ranger S. Grayson of North Cascades National Park. Ranger Grayson and the hikers escaped within an inch of their lives. Why was such a frightening attack hidden from the public for all these years? Could they have been pursued by an angry Sasquatch? Or worse, a roving pack of them? Or was this the prank of some angry Native Americans who didn't like the hikers hunting in their territory? It was the Salish people whose name of Sasquatch is the origin of the word Sasquatch. In fact, every Native American tribe has their own word for large, hairy men of great strength in the woods, most of which seem to imply that the creatures were more closely related to men, not beasts. Centuries later, Daniel Boone claimed to have killed one in West Virginia. There's even a theory that suggests it was after President Theodore Roosevelt heard about a first-hand Sasquatch encounter in Montana that he was moved to create the National Forest System to provide a safe refuge for the race of beings known as Sasquatch. Nowadays, the state of Washington is such a hotbed of Sasquatch sightings, several of which we've reported on before, that laws have been passed to protect them. In 1984, Skamania County made it illegal to kill or harm Bigfoot or any other cryptid. Violators face a $10,000 fine and 5-year prison sentence. In 1992, Whatcom County declared itself a Sasquatch refuge and protected area. So when footage like this emerges from the Pacific Northwest, it merits a closer look. There isn't much context for this incredible moment caught on camera, but something about it struck me. I couldn't let it go, so I started digging. The ambiguous footage got me thinking about something Ranger Grayson offhandedly mentioned in his report: the upcoming opening of the new Highway 20. State Route 20, also known as the North Cascades Highway, crosses the state of Washington all the way to the border of northern Idaho and was built specifically to bring visitors to the newly opened North Cascades National Park. As of the date of this report, July 1972, the highway had indeed not been opened yet. North Cascades was previously part of the National Forest System, and it had taken decades to receive official national park designation and governance by the NPS. Could a ranger claiming a terrifying Sasquatch sighting have disrupted the highway completion in some way? Or worse, jeopardize the newly won status of the national park? Perhaps that's why this ranger report was buried away. We were recently tipped off to another Sasquatch sighting that has a coincidental connection to Ranger Grayson's report. You'll remember the hikers, J and L, had been hunting in Mount Baker National Forest before crossing into North Cascades. This photo was snapped by a local hunter in Mount Baker. It's obvious from the visual clues, the bare trees and the snow on the ground, that this photo was taken well past November 1st when hunting season ends. In a private interview, the hunter admitted that's why he was so reluctant to share it publicly. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I did find it interesting to note that North Cascades did implement a backcountry permit system within 2 years of Ranger Grayson's incident, with the stated purpose of limiting access to the wilderness areas. But why would they open a park, build an expensive and destructive road in order to bring in thousands of new visitors, only to limit the use of it so quickly? Although we're left with more questions than answers, following that path of intrigue is par for the course for every good amateur cryptozoologist. What do you think? We'd love to hear about your own strange sightings and chilling encounters and see your mysterious trail cam photos. We might even share them on an upcoming episode of Parks Unseen. Email us at monstermythtv@gmail.com or drop a comment below. As for me, in light of this new footage and Ranger Grayson's terrifying report, I'll continue my quest for Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, but I might avoid hunting with a gun in Sasquatch country from now on. Thank you for joining us on this expedition into the enigmatic realm of our national parks. Until next time, stay curious and keep your eyes open. In the wild, you never know what secrets may be lurking, waiting to be unveiled in the great expanse of Parks Unseen.